My name is Morgan, 35 years old, and if you ever assumed the toilet paper industry was just for squishy tenderfeet, Jamie and I, we inherited an empire of necessity from our folks. Beneath but above all, they also left us a legacy which today we are committed to developing. In one of America's vibrant urban centers, I operate our flagship operation, and Jamie runs another branch a city or so over. We are a pair, no doubt. However, miles and obligations hold us in another situation on maximum days. But when Jamie comes round, we don't just discuss numbers and projections. Then we pause and wonder at the beginning of it as well, where our mamas watch down on us praying that they too are pleased with what from above is occurring. The branch was ticking over happily with me in charge, and my number 2 Ryan to back me up. Ryan is one of those almost mythical creatures, not just because he gets the job done, but he also gets me. His grin. Morgan, this concept is gonna take us to the moon. Me with, well, let's not start measuring ourselves for rings just yet. We were in tune, taking it to the edge and breaking shit. ANTER, /fresh-faced and keen as mustard, technically our new sales director. But that man was all in their head, for he could talk them into believing the sky were full of shit and yen, not blue. Soon, his professional charm crossed over into personal territory, and he went all the way in on me. Morgan, we are not only creating ripples here, tsunamis. Maybe this should be a permanent partnership. His eyes met mine and did not waver, a touch of defiance in his voice. Thinking he was joking, I laughed. Blake, you never fail to shock us. Running for president next, that's what. Yeah, right, he said with that cocky smile. We're dynamite together. The point we have should not be lost. It was a very weird offer, but I was used to being the one taking those kinds of chances. Well, I said with an uptick in my voice after realizing how ridiculous it all sounded out loud. What have we got here, Blake? In many ways, that handshake solidified not only our collective fate, but it was a sort of second act for the company as well. We got a huge sprawling house. You know the kind, like those palaces in magazines where people fold themselves into spaces to take pictures, and we were folding ourselves onto our corners. Our days were long, filled with love and the labor of one seeking greatness. A room full of luxury around us. Things were great, better than I ever dreamed they could be. 1 year inside of our whirlwind life, and then the news dropped on us, unexpected. I was expecting. I was over the moon, bursting with some form of joy you only read about in books and never really understand until it hits. The plan, or lack thereof, Blake, being the master strategist that he has presented a new plan. Cam, listen, this kid has more than earned all of you. Why do not you just for a bit step back from the hustle? His words hit me sideways. Step back and do what, Blake? Don't just sit around talking to my belly. He smirked, the smooth one. Not just that. For the MVP he will be preparing, it's temporary. I'll tell you all about it, I swear. I think the way he said it made me give in right then. Fine, but do not turn my branch into a circus. I was half joking, though mostly serious. While Blake literally picked up the reins in this branch that day, I was fully committing to pregnancy. We had some bumps along the way, though. The clinics felt like my second home, and every visit was nerve-wracking. After a grueling 6 months, mobility started to get difficult. It was like a marathon effort even for simple things. The rest of me except my body wasn't mine anymore. I was slow as a snail, but I said, guess it's just me and you, kiddo, slapping my belly, becoming more used to this slower stride of life. It only got worse for Blake, but his hours, so crazy. The nights at the office became habitual, his voice on the other line forever tired. Babe, It's slammed here. Another all-nighter might be needed. Concern still lingered, but Blake just had a way of not worrying. Don't you stress, Cam. It all for us / this shit is so confusing. That future you know what? To hell with them. Do you and the baby. But I desperately wanted to be wrong. But each don't wait up tore something small, and I stirred in the night wondering if this was how it went. But when I sat alone in that too big, too quiet house night after bleak winter night and the loneliness penetrated my flesh till it ached, eerie sounds of unfamiliar tappity taps and koshty coughs, I dialed him up to hear fixed words flowing from his practiced lips. Blake, this is not so simple 5 minutes. Seems like I am in this alone. He was quick to soothe. Doing what has to be done, Cam. Honestly, it WILALBEWORTHIT. We three, we're the cats who will melt all your cream. This was a little reassuring but also not, and I hung up feeling comforted, yet disturbed at the same time. The balm to my worries resting softly in Blake's words, though deep down things of a change struck quietly on the misty breeze, with an eerie sort of whisper that maybe it wouldn't always be WE traveling this path together. That's what I was doing one day when the doorbell rang. I slowly made my way to the door and opened it, revealing a very somber Jamie. Hey Jamie, what brings us here today with a sweet breeze of wind? Trying not to sound surprised, I said hello. Needed to see you, Cam. April 2019 time. Midday location Lincoln, Nebraska. Psalm sat the phone rang. Psalm's attention snapped from his Bible to the ringtone pulsing on our cell phones. Got this guy on my door proclaiming that he had deacon. We've got an issue. What? I recognized the look on his face. It was that something more than family time catch-up time thing. We were snuggled on the sofa, and he was sitting across from me all stiff like a rod. Spit it out then. What's up? It's the business, Cam. The numbers are looking grim. What's going on over there? In his human voice, with that steel edge he only used when it really mattered. Rubbing my seemingly restless belly, I sighed. Blake's been handling things. He said it's all good. Good, Cam. It's far from good. Asterisk sales decrease. Orderly delivery. Where's he been all this time? Jamie was getting red in the face, gesturing with his hands. I felt a pang of worry. He's managing it, he says to me. He's overseeing the recruiting, signed big contracts. #circle meeting. himself.twitter.com/ViewerJCSI5D. Jamie leaned in, locking eyes with mine. I stopped her quick. Hey listen, I know you love the kid and all, but Blake's up to something. We need to dig into this. You cannot just sit idle and watch it. All right, I'll talk to him. Oh, but you know how he is, always smoothing it over, I replied, and the weight of my world grew. Alison sit up, at the end that has to part with. Do not let this smooth talker, Ham. We cannot let everything go down to the drain, as of, whatever this is. He was already out the door before I could even say goodbye. That evening, dinner was like a chess game. Or point, he was on restaurant turf as usual. Blake beamed and regaled us with office tidbits, while I, on the other hand, was storm brewing thanks to what Jamie had dropped on me earlier. Nice and smooth company, bahut acha chal rahahai bakhe. I tried, but I much more prodded at my food than ate it. Income steady, no hiccups. Blake had hardly looked at anything but his sirloin. Yeah, all good. Smooth sailing, you know? We entered our name into the competition for best executives in this city. We're killing it, babe. And he had the nerve of being somewhat confident, a cold slap in our faces. Really? Right, I miraculously choked out, my voice more parched than toast. My doubts were doing somersaults. I heard Jamie's words repeating in my head, giving a whole other meaning to them. Afterward, while Blake was singing in the shower, I picked up my phone and called Ryan, one of my ex-deputies. My heart was beating so loudly the ringtone became muffled. Ryan, it's me, I said as soon as he answered. I need the real scoop. The office, how is things going there? For a split second, long enough for me to regret dialing. Then Ryan's voice, hesitant. "Morgan, you really have to see it. It's not. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" I pushed. The frustration was seeping through. Ryan was a vault, unlocked slightly to tell me enter. Getting out of bed was literally like trying to strip away from my own shadow, thick and choking with sadness. It was a day, but not just another one. It had inscribed in it that resolution of this mess I'd been pulled into through my office meeting issue. I poured coffee into a cup in my hands, but they trembled and the black liquid was like somber thoughts bubbling away. "Morning, love." Blake's voice was too loud for the silence of our kitchen. Too cheerful, too self-absorbed. My heart was pounding against my chest like a drum, and I forced a smile. "Morning. Busy day ahead." "Always. It becomes bigger and bigger." Whirlwind, high-stakes readers. That full of shit attitude spread his chest, so he looked like a rooster in a henhouse. I nodded, my brewing storm safely hidden underneath that facade of calm. When Blake got off work, I waited for him to leave the house before getting into my car. The drive to work was a blur, my hands death-gripping the steering wheel. The closer I came, the more reality hit me. This was it, the moment of truth. Ryan stood nearby, the lines of his gravity pulled tension more pronounced on his face. He greeted Morgan as if the walls were listening in, a low whisper. I so nodded and led me to my office. She felt like an intruder in a foreign, sterile room. "It's bad, Morgan. Simi worse," he stated, moving them around like a crooked card dealer. As our team dug into the data, what was truly a disaster revealed itself. Blake's been creative in the accounting, and his team, my god, a bunch of cronies with no idea what actually goes on here. Ryan's voice was thick with disgust, fucking bleeding us dry. I felt the anger boiling in, like a Vesuvius waiting to pop. And the contracts. "Please tell me we have not blown the Ryanson account." Silence of Ryan was an answer louder than any words. Ryan dropped the biggest bombshell of all, one that hurt me to my core as we continued down this path with revelations about what state is your company. "Blake's never here, Morgan. The bastard. In fact, he ain't here now." His voice was angry and disbelieving. When I found out about that, it honestly floored me. Anxious, I pulled out my cell and dialed Blake. His voice echoed in the speaker after a couple of rings. "Hey, babe, what's up? Where are you?" I inquired, calm on the outside while a storm was brewing within. "Drowning at the office. Where else would I be?" He sounded casual, too casual. I hung up and looked to Ryan, my determination solidified. We play it smart until we determine our play. Ryan nodded, realizing the seriousness of what he was getting at. "What's the plan, boss?" I drew in a deep breath and my brain began whirring with more purpose. Step 1. Lock in our contracts. I will contact the buyers and ask for some delays where required. We need to buy some time. A few days of restless night and worry had hardened into a resolve that these early morning fog were trying to shake. The demons that had seeded in my business and life were now finally going to have a spotlight on them. I was meeting the PI I hired, someone Ryan suggested. Incognito, I walked into a coffee shop whose anonymity speaks secrets as the barista deals with grinds of dark brew. The PI, tough-looking guy with eyes that were all business, pushed a manila envelope towards me. His voice was a gravelly, cigarette and whiskey sound. "Everything you asked for is in there." My hand lingered over the envelope, and implored, needing the words to be said. "More times than one, he's been a cheating fuck," the PI added with no sympathy in his tone. "Your husband has been playing house with a co-worker. I have pictures and everything." And I felt this less than a millisecond before my heart sank, anger and betrayal mixed with an odd sense of vindication swirling in me. I thought as much, but I tried very hard to be wrong. "Show me," I demanded, my voice far sturdier than it should have been. He spread the pictures like a deck of cards, each one killing me emotionally. And there she was, laughter, touch and divide moments could have been mine, only one of our own employees, Blake. I repressed the urge to cry, to shout, and I let that rage fuel me instead. What else? I demanded, refusing to look away from the damning proof. They have been studiously careful, if inadequate. Even your husband has been siphoning company money. It seems they may have been on a little romantic retreat that the PI embarrassedly had to tell us. That was the last straw. Blake was using my business and our family's legacy as nothing more than a petty cash cow to fund his frolics. Thanks, I replied, pushing the envelope back to me. With my mind running again, I paid way more than needed for the coffee. I sat in my car and allowed myself to cry for one single moment of weakness where I could finally grieve the life that never was mine. After the tears stopped, determination replaced them. Blake and his hoe had fucked up the wrong person. I would be their new plaything, just a thing they maybe could improve to perfection. They were wrong. I called Ryan, so serene and glacial. You must also call a meeting of the TAM tomorrow afternoon. You are all required to be there, no exceptions. As always, Ryan, my solid and foundation neutral, queried not. Consider it done, Morgan. My thoughts were a blur like the drive home, devising plans. It wasn't simply revenge. It was about justice, making all the wrongs that had been committed against me and my company right. When I got home, Blake greeted me with a smile without noticing the storm in my chest. Hey, babe, long day. I mustered a smile, acting out the role one final time. You could say that. Dinner smells great. We ate mostly in silence instead. He spoke of his day, and I nodded back to him as if my life were a script. I was plotting, I guess for the whole time my mind was somewhere else. The cold glow of the fluorescence in the conference room prevailed over us. I was at the front, papers in hand, belly pregnant as all fuck to illustrate just how goddamn much I had on this particular line. With the help from Ryan, my loyal deputy, I had orchestrated this vital agenda. The room was overflowing with employees, and in the midst of them all sat Blake alongside his homewrecker of a mistress wearing their best imitation doe eyes. Cut the bullshit, I said, keeping my voice calm even though there was a fucking war in me. This has been a record-breaking loss under Blake's watch. This has affected our bottom line because those are contracts to which we have made commitments with key partners. I pressed the remote and the graphs on screen told an ugly story. 7 straight months of descent. Blake squirmed under my look, head on. This means that the drastic is necessary. With immediate effect, I am firing all of those who have led us to this decline. The room was quiet, my words settling in. I followed up, with Blake, we let you go for cause, mismanagement and egregious breach of trust. I jerked my head in the direction of his mistress. You for continued truancy and complicity in this disaster, as well as boffing my husband. Suddenly, whispers filled the room as the mistress left in disgrace, with her bags packed and escaped, for all knew she was found out. His face crumpled to an uncomfortable level of red before Blake slowly, but surely rose. Morgan, you can't do this. Think before you act. His plea was met with a cold glare from me. Blake, I have pondered this long and hard. It is the only way to save that future, for this company and for our daughter. When the meeting concluded, staff members came to me, visibly and almost audibly exhaling their relief. We're behind you, Morgan. We are glad to have you back, they said, and I took solace in their backing support, my nerves only a little less tight. As I was exiting the room, Blake made a move to trap me. Morgan, for the love of *name *ITIV, can't CNWETLK. We can fix it. Blake, we are setting up the easy out. Your decisions but that, I said, handing him a sealed envelope from the armrest of my chair, filled with signed divorce papers. With shaking hands, he accepted the envelope that only now did it dawn on him was more than just a piece of mail, watching his every move. But Morgan, No, Blake, it's over. Go now, I said in what my teachers would have termed an iron will. The dust settled, the air cleared, and before lay ruin. My refuge, the company, has faced our ruthless storm, but it was time for resurgence only to bring what happened back. The next morning when I entered the office, it was with a new step, one of confident resolve. Ryan was waiting when we arrived, an arsenal of paper unfurled across the war room. Heiner looked up as I came in and nodded knowingly at me. "Morning, Morgan. Ready to start fresh?" In fact, Ryan's voice was both a pep talk and heavy with the work facing everyone. I threw my bag onto the street and started rolling up his sleeves of my jacket. "Let's get to it. We have a mountain to climb." Number one was clearing up damage. Those close to bailing on us themselves. I led, earnest in my tone yet apologetic with eyes that seemed hopeful. "Listen, I know we've really dropped the ball here, but rest assured that whilst it's taken a little while, this time I'm back in the saddle and ready to put things right." This was me on my phone addressing our biggest customer at Thompson, no relation, just two lucky owners of awesome surnames. And of course he was hesitant. "Morgan, your shop is a shadow of itself." "Yes, I do, and I'm not trying to excuse myself. I'm here to offer solutions. Let us show you that we are still the company you loved and trusted." He sighed almost an eternity later. "All right, Morgan, we'll give you one more shot. Don't let us down." The conversations walked on a tightrope, one by one, negotiations and reassurances ready to tip over at the smallest miscalculation. After that, it was always a celebration to retain each client, soothing the still open wounds of betrayal. Ryan and I then began our conversation with the team. The room was quieter now, lacking a background buzz of productivity. Now, the few employees that were left felt confused and uncertain of their fate. "You all have been through a lot," I said to the gathered team, my voice echoing in the mostly empty office. He'd been tied up, gagged and hung, dangling from the gently swaying tree above us. "But I can tell you this, we will rise stronger than ever." A murmur of assent swept the room with a spark is something like hope igniting in their gazes. "We are all in this together, back to basics and focusing on what made us great," I told them, each looking into their eyes. The team banded together, the mission reborn. We threw ourselves into work, days blurring into nights as we navigated our path towards security and prosperity. The moment my baby boy Jesse was born, he instantly became everything. We came to the conclusion that working from home was us best, sustainable, balancing taking care of a newborn and steering my company back on track. My rock in all this chaos, Jamie also began to make more and more appearances. Not just for work anymore, but something about him being there was clearly doing us good. "And sis, you are not alone. We're a team, remember?" At the threshold of my door, grocery bag in one hand and toys for Jesse in other, he'd remind me every time. The clean-cut divorce from Blake, which was long overdue. The court not only awarded me the divorce, but they also nailed Blake on his cheating. He had to pay back every penny he stole from the company for all suffering his actions caused. "I'm sorry, Morgan. Please, I beg you to give me another chance since," he begged, trying anything that would work. But my mind was made up. Jesse needs a hero, not an adulterous bitch for his mom, I said before exiting out of that chapter in my book. Besides Samantha being there for me in the beginning after Lid was born, and I learned how to properly hold her with the help from Nanny. With half days, I could spend my mornings with Jesse and the second part of my day working. It gave me a peace and focus that I had not experienced in some time. Building the trust is much more difficult than you could ever imagine. I learned that the hard way. "Ryan, we are getting our ship in shape," I declared over another of the many video calls to my deputy. "I am done with blind faith. Any decision that needed a go-ahead, and it came before me. Clear as crystal, Morgan." Ryan always found a way to be supportive, one hand holding the other in his since unwavering loyalty and sturdiness. The company wasn't only afloat, it was doing better in ways I had not thought attainable after such betrayal. It was a time of shifting seasons, and soon the next chapter in my life. Where he once felt like the walls were closing in around him, was now a utopia of serenity and growth. What was now making the rounds at the water cooler wasn't stock or mergers, but karma. Mistress of my ex-husband, cast off, abandoned, divorced, cautionary tale for karma. His phone vibrated a few times, Blake calling him for days on end the toll, and Pattern making his name appear occasionally on screen in flashing red make or break fonts, as doubtless he was begging to be one of many last chances. After a few tries, my conviction only gathered in its momentum so much as that it all ended with me hitting block for the very last time and cut off the past entirely. And Jesse, his vibrant laugh and limitless energy lightened up my apartment so completely that I could no longer see any of the darkness left over from those turbulent years. Every day with him was as if he gave me a gift, took me on an adventure, and created the future filled of love, good values for us to grow from each hardship. Jamie began to come over more frequently, and with every visit his presence alone not only reminded us of the bond we had, but validated it, because despite all the fires our relationship has been through, what was forged from that fire burned strong. Pitoa Jamie became as regular a visitor. "You're doing amazing, sis." He patted Jesse on the head. "You're a fortunate guy to have him," and that ebullient giggle in response. "Doing well, aren't we, pal?" And I would answer, "My heart so full your baby seemed God tier." The business wasn't merely surviving, it was thriving. Jamie and Ryan by my side, we overcame those obstacles with fire in our bellies, making lemons into lemonade. So I sat there in the quiet of night with my son beside me and whispered a promise into that darkness, a vow to keep on going forward, one day at a time. Everything was overwhelming now, but everything also had joy where before it did not, and reminded myself never lose courage nor foresight to let go ever again.
My stepmom Linda really hated me. She didn't see me as her stepson. Instead, she saw me as a reminder of her husband's past that she wanted to forget. She was bitter and secretly planned with a rich woman who recently moved nearby to get rid of me and sell the farm. Their plan was to erase any connection they had with me, but things didn't go as planned, and a surprising twist changed everything, leading to a series of unexpected events that completely changed my life. Hi, I'm Peter, and I'm here to tell you a story that goes through some really dark lies and ends up in the light of redemption. It all started in Walton, Georgia, where I lived on a big chicken farm. It might have seemed peaceful to someone passing by, but for me, it was like a battleground. Despite being just 10 years old, I had to deal with responsibilities that were meant for adults. My mom died while giving birth to me, which was a tragedy that shaped my whole life. After that, my dad turned to alcohol to cope with his grief instead of being there for me. Soon after, he brought Linda into our lives, but she saw me as a constant reminder of a past she wanted to forget. Our so-called home relied on the meager income from our chicken farm. We sold eggs and chickens to get by, but my dad often wasted our money at the bar, leaving us barely scraping by. Every morning, before most people woke up, I was out in the fields feeding the chickens and gathering eggs. My hands became rough and callous from the hard work, even though I never chose this life. School became a distant memory, something for other kids, not for someone like me who had to keep a farm running. But things got worse the day Linda's true intentions came to light. I overheard her talking on the phone, sharp and secretive, discussing a solution to her problems. I didn't understand everything, but I felt it still nonetheless. That's when Robinson entered the picture. She was a wealthy widow who had recently moved into a mansion nearby. Her arrival caused quite a stir in town. But for Linda, it was an opportunity. I later learned that Linda saw a chance to get rid of me by striking a deal with Robinson. I first encountered Robinson one evening, the sky ablaze with crimson and purple hues. She visited our farm, claiming she was interested in buying it. Her eyes, sharp and observant, seemed to see beyond the surface. Despite a kind demeanor, her presence filled me with an unexplained dread. Linda commanded, "Peter, show Robinson around the farm." Her voice dripped with a false sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. As I guided Robinson around, showing her the coops and feed sheds, her questions went deeper than expected. "You manage all this on your own, Peter?" she asked, her tone holding a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Yes, ma'am. It's hard work, but I handle it," I replied. trying to hide the weariness in my voice, akin to the dirt on my boots. Robinson's gaze lingered on me longer than necessary, her eyes reflecting a storm of thoughts. As we returned to the house, the setting sun cast long shadows, twisting the familiar path into something ominous. That night, as I lay in bed, listening to the distant hoot of an owl, I overheard Linda and my father speaking in hushed tones. They were planning something significant and life-changing. Fragments of their conversation reached me, sending waves of panic through me. "We'll be free of the burden," Linda whispered fervently once Robinson takes the farm and him. Their laughter, cold and cruel, drifted up to my small attic room. I lay there, the weight of their plans pressing down on me. What did they mean? Was I the burden they wanted to be rid of? These questions swirled in my mind, each more unsettling than the last as dawn broke. The next morning, I faced the day with a determination I hadn't felt before. I knew I had to take action to uncover what was being schemed behind closed doors. Little did I know, the answers would rock the very core of my world. The day began like any other on the farm, with roosters crowing and chickens bustling about, unaware of the human deceit unfolding around them. But today, I wasn't just going through the motions of chores. I was actively listening and watching for any signs of what was to come. After finishing my usual tasks, I quietly made my way back to the house. The front door was slightly ajar, either a careless mistake or perhaps a providential opportunity. Pressing my ear to the gap, I listened intently. Inside, Linda and my father were engaged in hushed, urgent conversation with Robinson, who had returned under the pretext of finalizing the sale of the farm. "We appreciate your generous offer, Robinson." My father's words were slightly slurred, carrying the remnants of last night's liquor, and we're ready to move forward. "This place and the boy, it's all too much for us now." Robinson's voice, smooth yet sharp, made me shiver. "I understand your situation, and I assure you, I can take care of everything. The farm will be in good hands, and so will Peter." The way she said my name sent a chill down my spine. Was she merely another antagonist in this scheme, or was there something deeper at play? Determined to find answers, I took a risk. Later that day, while Linda was in town and my father was sleeping off another drinking spree, I approached Robinson as she inspected the farm's perimeter. "Robinson," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why do you want to buy our farm, and why are you interested in me?" She studied me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine. Then, to my surprise, she sighed. "Peter, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. But I promise, whatever happens, I'll make sure you're safe." Her words puzzled me. They hinted at kindness, but the uncertainty of her intentions hung in the air like the Georgia heat. Over the next few days, tension grew at home. Linda's glances were sharp and calculating, and my father avoided my eyes, guilt flickering in his usual indifference. They were planning to leave, I heard them say one night. They spoke of a new life, one without the farm and without me. The day before they were supposed to finalize everything with Robinson, I decided to confront Linda. I found her in the kitchen, packing dishes with more care than she had ever shown to me. "Linda," I said, my voice cracking with fear and anger. "What's going to happen to me?" She froze, then turned slowly, her look pitiless. "Peter, you're going to a better place. Robinson will take good care of you, better than we ever could." "But I don't want to leave," I protested, my voice rising. Linda's face hardened. "It's not about what you want, Peter. It's for the best." That night, unable to sleep, I lay in bed listening to the whispers of the wind through the cracked window. My heart weighed heavy, my future uncertain as the next morning approached, bringing Robinson back to our farm to finalize the sale and supposedly my fate. As dawn crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, I made a decision. I couldn't just wait to see what would happen to me. I needed to act, to escape, to find someone who could help. But just as I was about to sneak out, a car rolled up the driveway. It wasn't just any car, though. It was a police cruiser. Suddenly, everything changed. The doors opened, and two stern-faced officers stepped out, followed by Robinson, determination etched on her face. I was as confused as anyone by the police arriving at our doorstep, my heart pounding with uncertainty. Robinson walked up to the house with purpose, the officers flanking her like guardians of some grim truth yet to be revealed. As they approached, Linda and my father emerged, confusion etched across their faces. They clearly hadn't expected this visit. My father, still groggy from his morning stupor, tried to put on a brave front. "Officers, what brings you to our humble home so early?" he asked, his voice cracking under the strain. "We received a call concerning the welfare of a minor and potential fraudulent activities related to the sale of this property," one of the officers announced. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment as their words sank in. Linda's face drained of color, and she gripped my father's arm tightly. I watched from my hiding spot behind the doorway, my curiosity battling the waves of fear crashing inside me. Robinson caught my eye and gave a slight nod, as if to reassure me, but her expression was serious, all business. "Peter," she called out, her voice steady and clear. "Could you please come here?" With legs that felt like they were made of lead, I stepped forward, joining the adults under the scrutinizing gaze of the law. "Peter, have your guardians discussed any plans about your future with you?" the other officer asked gently. I glanced at Linda and my father, their faces a mix of fear and guilt. Taking a deep breath, I voiced the truth. They said I'd be going to live with Robinson because they couldn't take care of me anymore. But I don't know what they meant by that. The officers exchanged a look, and Robinson spoke up. "I never intended to take Peter away without his consent or legal proceedings. I was here to discuss buying the farm. But when I learned about the child's situation, my concerns grew. I contacted you because I feared for his safety and well-being." The officers nodded, turning their attention back to Linda and my father. "We need to check some documents and have a longer conversation about Peter's custody and your financial dealings," one officer said, motioning for them to lead the way inside. As they walked into the house, Robinson stayed behind for a moment with me. "Peter, no matter what happens today, I want you to know that my home is always open to you, and not because of any deal, but because you deserve a safe and loving environment." Her words felt like a warm blanket around my shivering shoulders. I nodded, not fully understanding the legal intricacies, but feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Inside, the officers began their questioning, pulling out documents that Linda and my father fumbled to explain. It became apparent that there were inconsistencies and possible forgeries in the paperwork related to the farm sale. As the officers dug deeper, Linda's facade finally cracked. "It was all his idea," she confessed. Linda burst out, pointing a trembling finger at my father. "He wanted to sell the farm and get rid of the kid. I just went along with it." My father, his face now a mask of despair, looked at me, his eyes finally meeting mine. "Peter, I'm sorry. I thought it would be better for you." The room spun around me as accusations flew and confessions spilled. The officers took notes, their expressions grim. The betrayal stung, yes, but the unfolding truth also brought a strange relief. Finally, I was seeing the reality of my life laid out in black and white, acknowledged by those who had the power to change it. As morning turned into afternoon, decisions were made. Linda and my father were taken into custody for further questioning, and I was left in the temporary care of Robinson. As we left the farm, I looked back at the only home I had ever known, feeling the weight of my past and the uncertain promise of my future. As we drove away, the landscape of my past receded into a blur of green and gray, a picture fading into the background of my new reality. Seated next to Robinson in the warmth of her car, I felt the first true sense of safety in what seemed like forever. Yet my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, relief, fear, and a budding hope. "Peter, I know today has been difficult, and the days ahead will be a transition, but you're not alone anymore," Robinson said, her voice soothing. She explained that she had been watching the farm for a while, suspecting something was amiss. Her intervention was not just about the property, but more about ensuring my well-being. When we arrived at her estate, it was like stepping into another world. The house was large but welcoming, surrounded by gardens that bloomed with colors so vivid they almost looked surreal. It was a stark contrast to the drab existence I had known. Over the next few days, Robinson took care of the formalities. She was appointed my temporary guardian, and the process to become my official foster parent was set in motion. During this time, I learned more about her. She had been unable to have children, and her husband had passed away a few years back, leaving her with a large estate and a lonely heart. One afternoon, as we walked through her rose garden, she stopped and looked at me earnestly. "Peter, I want you to know that you're not a replacement or a charity case. You're a brave young boy who deserves a chance at happiness. I hope with time you'll come to see this place as your home." Her words planted something inside me, a seed of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could have a future here, one filled with love and stability. But the story didn't end with just new beginnings. The past, as it often does, had one last twist to reveal. A few weeks after moving in with Robinson, I received an unexpected call from the police. They wanted to see me about the ongoing investigation into my father and Linda. At the station, an officer handed me a letter found among Linda's possessions. It was addressed to me from my mother. It had been hidden, kept away by Linda all these years. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside, my mother wrote about her love for me, her hopes for my future, and her deep regret that she wouldn't be there to see it unfold. The letter shattered and healed parts of me I didn't even know needed mending. It was a piece of my past that Linda had tried to steal, but now it was mine, a connection to a mother I never knew. As the weeks turned into months, the court cases against Linda and my father proceeded. They were found guilty of fraud and child neglect. My father tried to reach out, to apologize, to reconnect. But for me, the path forward didn't include him, not yet. Forgiveness is a complex journey, and I wasn't ready to embark on it. Life with Robinson, or Margaret as I came to call her, was filled with the mundane and the magnificent. School, which had once been a distant dream, became a part of my daily routine. Margaret supported my studies, my explorations of new hobbies, and most importantly, she supported me in finding my way through the tangled emotions of my past. One evening, as Margaret and I sat watching the sunset from the porch, she turned to me and said, "Peter, all families are built differently. Some are formed by blood, others by bonds stronger than blood. We're the latter, and I couldn't be prouder." That moment, with the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, felt like the final piece of a puzzle being placed. The chaos of my past had led me to this tranquil present, and the future was a canvas waiting. And so, my friends, this is where my tale concludes, not with an end, but with a beginning. A beginning of a life once shadowed by deceit and neglect, but now illuminated by the promise of unconditional love and new discoveries. This is not just my story, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of compassion. Thank you for walking this journey with me through the shadows and into the light.
My son's wife suddenly told me she didn't want me around because she didn't like anything about me and wanted to live alone with her family. Those words hit me hard, reminding me of when I had to leave my own parents' home. Anger surged within me at the idea of being pushed out again. I decided to leave, gathering my things. That was it. I vowed never to forgive her. It was time to act on my plan. My name is Sandra Clark, and I'm turning 61 this year. Although I'm technically retired, I'm still fortunate enough to have a job. I don't go to the office every day. Instead, I work mostly from home. My oldest son seems to think I've stopped working altogether. I became a widow in my 40s. I currently live with my oldest son and his wife in our old family home, which has a large property. Despite its issues, I really love the place, which made the idea of moving out quite tough. Financially, I've never had much trouble. Most of the insurance payout from my late husband remains untouched, providing a worry-free lifestyle for my twilight years. However, despite this seemingly carefree life, I do have concerns, mainly revolving around my oldest son's wife, Jessica. She has a strong personality and frequently clashes with me, a dynamic that began when she first announced her intention to marry my son. I vividly remember her casual attire during our first meeting, which she claimed was to show her true self, but to me, it seemed disrespectful. Jessica is highly argumentative and articulate, making it challenging to navigate conversations with her. I'd often wonder why my son chose her as his partner, only to later learn that she was the one who pursued him. Despite her sometimes outrageous behavior, she possesses a striking beauty that, I suspect, captivated my somewhat naive and sheltered son from the start. Even after they got married, Jessica's behavior remained consistent. To put it kindly, she's not pretentious, but to be frank, she often seems to lack common sense in her actions. I strongly considered opposing their marriage, but I reminded myself that it was what my son wanted, so I kept my patience. However, the outcome of their marriage has led to the situation we're facing now. Initially, my son insisted that we continue living together in our family home after the wedding. I had expected Jessica to object, but surprisingly, she was also in favor of it. It soon became evident why she agreed. Despite being a full-time housewife, Jessica never contributed to household chores. She left everything, cleaning, laundry, meal preparation, solely to me. What's more, she quit her job at the time of the marriage, while I continued to work remotely, leaving me with less free time than her. When I'm working at my computer, Jessica often makes belittling comments, suggesting that I'm just goofing off. Initially, I laughed it off to avoid arguments, but it started to bother me over time. Once, when Jessica was lounging and watching TV, I asked her if she could help with the cleaning. Instead of agreeing or politely declining, she made a disgusted face, sighed dramatically, and explained that she doesn't do housework for my sake. According to her unique theory, if she did the chores, it would deprive me of my only job, which she believes would lead to a sedentary lifestyle and potential health issues like dementia due to lack of stimulation. In simpler terms, Jessica's illogical reasoning of not doing any housework herself, claiming it's for my benefit, was incredibly frustrating. Her comment about living together to ensure I don't slack off left me speechless. I deeply regretted agreeing to this arrangement. Every day felt like torture, constantly doing chores while being watched by Jessica. I reached my breaking point and decided to talk to my eldest son, not to complain about Jessica, but to explain the difficulties I faced in our current home. Due to the old layout of the house and my back issues from last year, I realized it was time for a change. I didn't want to feel pushed out by Jessica, but I knew I needed to prioritize my well-being. So I decided to move to an apartment where I could live alone. Although the new place might be a bit too large for just me, I made sure to rent a room big enough for my grandchildren to stay over in the future. After customizing the interior to my liking, I finally felt like I had my own little castle. However, my happiness didn't last long. Jessica started visiting every day, staying until late at night. She lounged on the couch in my new apartment, commenting on its size and suggesting I return to our old home to do the chores for my health and longevity. It's unbelievable how self-centered she can be, and it's incredibly frustrating. I've already moved out for my well-being, and her suggestion is absurd. I reminded her that I've taken care of everything in the apartment, and my health checkups have been fine. But she simply ignored me, turning her head away as if my words were insignificant. It's maddening how she always ignores anything that inconveniences her. Despite my reminders, Jessica continued her usual strategy of ignoring inconveniences and kept visiting my apartment every day. Just recently, she even ended up staying the night, claiming it was too much hassle to go back to her own place. My parents' home and this apartment are just a 15-minute walk apart, and it was my eldest son who suggested I live near them due to his concern for me. While his gesture touched me, it was still hard to leave the old house. One day, when I returned from a rare business-related outing, I was shocked to find Jessica lounging in my apartment as if it were her own. To my disbelief, she had used the spare key I gave to my son without my knowledge. "Ah, welcome back," she said casually from the floor in front of the TV, not even bothering to get up. I felt uneasy realizing she had been in my apartment without my consent or knowledge. While I was away, I finally stood up to Jessica sternly, a departure from my usual quick-to-forgive demeanor. She seemed surprised, as she was used to my usual anger dissipating quickly. When she called me a stingy mother-in-law and started yelling, I held my ground. She insisted I leave the apartment, claiming it wasn't fair for me to live there while they stayed in the old house. She seemed to think my son James was paying the rent, which explained her frequent visits. In her mind, the apartment should have been for her family, so I agreed to leave within 3 days. Jessica demanded I call a moving company in front of her to prove my intentions. I immediately arranged for movers to come in 2 days, satisfying her. As she left, satisfied with her victory, I began formulating a plan. I moved out as promised, settling into a senior apartment for a trial period of 2 weeks. I handed over the keys and lease documents to Jessica, asking for a contract change through the real estate agent, who was accommodating due to our long-standing relationship. Meanwhile, my eldest son was furious with Jessica for kicking me out, even considering divorce, but she seemed indifferent. Surprisingly, Jessica decided to live alone in my apartment, declaring her independence. I marveled at her audacity. However, in 5 days, Jessica would learn the truth. While working remotely, I anticipated Jessica's call. I had a recorder ready to capture our conversation. When she called, I deliberately stayed calm, irritating her further. She complained about the rent, assuming James was supposed to pay it. When my son corrected her and urged her to call me, it became clear she didn't know the truth. In reality, I had been financially supporting James since retiring. I continued working at the company as a consultant while also providing industry advice as an advisor, earning a good salary. With my experience, I made more money than my eldest son. Secretly, I'd been helping him financially because Jessica's spending habits put him in a tough spot. Jessica thought my son was paying the rent for the apartment, but it was actually me. When I clarified this to her, she seemed shocked. After our call, I shared the recorded conversation with my son, who was worn out from dealing with Jessica's debts. He agreed to divorce her. I laid out a plan for him. Take a few days off work, discreetly move his important stuff out of the apartment without Jessica noticing, and find a new place to live. Over the next few days, my son followed the plan. He moved his belongings quietly, ensuring Jessica didn't suspect anything. He sent her belongings to her parents' house and put their house up for sale, leaving it empty. When Jessica called in a panic, I calmly handled her questions. It turned out she couldn't afford the rent on her own, so I had to leave. I decided to talk to James about the situation. When I returned home, I found chains and a padlock on the gate, along with a for sale sign. Jessica was almost hysterical when she arrived. I calmly told her that I had already finalized a sales contract with a realtor, and we couldn't access the house anymore. I took the opportunity to address a few things that had been bothering me. Firstly, I made it clear that I was no longer her mother-in-law. Yesterday, James had filed for divorce, something she had signed off on a while ago. It seemed threatening divorce was a habit of hers, but my son had finally seen through it and submitted the papers. I reminded Jessica that she had always said she could divorce James anytime. Now it had happened. On the phone, I sensed Jessica's frustration as she struggled to respond. She vented her anger, cursing me and blaming her marriage to my son on the inheritance left by my late husband. She claimed I controlled all the money, leaving her with nothing to show for it. I let James listen to her tirade, planning to use the recording as evidence in a divorce settlement. After her outburst, Jessica broke down, begging for help. She revealed that her parents had disowned her due to her reckless spending and borrowing habits. She pleaded with me to assist her, admitting that something had felt off at the wedding, a realization that finally clicked for me. It was strange from the start, Jessica having nowhere to go after the fallout. While I felt a twinge of sympathy, I saw it as a consequence of her actions. Apologies wouldn't change things. We were strangers now, with nothing left to discuss. I wished her luck and ended the call, feeling a sense of relief afterward. However, Jessica's troubles didn't end there. She caused quite a commotion at my son's workplace, leading to the police being called. When she returned to the apartment she had been squatting in, she found the locks changed by the landlord, leaving her locked out. She tried to reach out to us, but we had changed our numbers and didn't share our new address. Desperate, she turned to her disowned family, only to find herself rejected. Her belongings were left out in the rain, and she wasn't even allowed inside. The unpaid rent for the apartment had been billed to her parents, adding to their anger. Rumor has it that she's now staying in a support organization's apartment for the homeless. Seeing her on the street, she seemed stressed and overwhelmed by her circumstances. Seeing Jessica, I was taken aback by how much she had changed. Her hair had turned white, and her skin looked dry. She seemed like a different person altogether. It made me realize the profound impact living conditions can have on someone. Meanwhile, I started a new chapter in the house I purchased with my late husband's inheritance. It's a duplex. So my son has the option to remarry whenever he wants. He joins me for dinner, but otherwise, he takes care of his own affairs. This level of distance feels just right. The money from selling my parents' home is saved for future needs. I plan to use it to support my son and his future wife, and of course, to spoil any future grandchildren. I've even been thinking of creating the English garden I've always dreamed of in my new home. On days when I don't work, I find solace in the garden, tending to the young trees and herbs. This new life, filled with hope, has become my daily routine.
Taking care of the house and kids was always considered the wife's responsibility, right? So making your husband do these tasks would mean you're not doing your job properly as a wife. My mother-in-law couldn't accept the idea of her son doing any housework or childcare. She believed that since he provided for the family, I should handle everything at home without complaining. I felt helpless in the face of her anger. I couldn't even speak up to defend myself. She reminded me that I owed everything I had to my husband and called me ungrateful. She even criticized me for not doing the laundry myself, saying she wasn't a maid. My husband didn't stand up for me, which hurt even more. It felt like both of them were looking down on me. My breaking point came when my mother-in-law hinted that if my husband divorced me, I wouldn't be able to survive on my own with our daughter. I'm Kathy, a 30-year-old office worker. I met Steve in college and we started dating. We decided to get married when we both started working. Soon after, I got pregnant and had our child. Because of my irregular work hours, I changed jobs around the time of the birth. Now I work full-time with fewer overtime hours. After getting married, I realized that Steve often relied on his mother's opinions to make decisions. So I was surprised when he brought her along for important discussions. While we were searching for a new house, I was discussing options with my husband. The living room here is spacious and the shopping area is convenient. What do you think? I asked. But instead of giving his opinion, my husband turned to his mother for her thoughts. Mom, what do you think? He asked. I couldn't help but feel frustrated. The sunlight isn't very good here, and other places might be better, I pointed out. Yeah, I thought the same, my husband agreed. It seemed like his mother's opinion always came first. Eventually, we settled on a place that she approved of. I didn't mind it, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of dissatisfaction. Even when it came to buying furniture or appliances, his mother would tag along. Hey, I think your mom is busy. Why don't we go just the two of us next time? I suggested, hoping to have some alone time with my husband, but he insisted that his mom's opinion was important. Subtly hinting that I wanted to make decisions just with my husband didn't work. Occasionally, during weekdays, my husband would skip dinner at home and go to his mother's house to eat. Since I was working, not having to prepare dinner for him was a relief, so I didn't question it much. His mother was happy to have her son visit occasionally, and I didn't want to cause any tension between us. As years passed, our daughter grew, and we started discussing building a new house. My husband was calm about it, and when his mother wasn't around, he spent time playing with our child. I wanted to build a new house where the three of us could live peacefully. I'm worried about Mom's future. How about we all live together? Out of the blue, my husband suggested that we should live with his mother. I knew she'd love to live with her son and granddaughter, but I was totally against the idea. Living with her meant constantly tiptoeing around her feelings because she never listened to my opinions. To her, her son was everything, and I felt like I was just in the way. If we lived together, I'd have to see her every day, and I wanted to avoid that at all costs. But your mom wants to stay near her current home, right? She has friends there and doesn't want to move too far, my husband reasoned. I knew she was attached to the area she knew well. However, if we moved near her, it would mean a longer commute for me to the office, which I wasn't thrilled about. I showed my husband several land options that a realtor had gathered. They were in areas with plenty of parks, nature, and convenient shopping, and they were also close to train stations. The fact that they were near his mother's place made him give his approval. I was relieved that we could steer clear of living with her. But after that, she started coming to our house often. My husband welcomed her, and I couldn't refuse her visits. While I understood her desire to see her granddaughter, my daughter didn't warm up to her at all, always crying whenever she saw her, which made me anxious. I wanted to relax on my days off, but I couldn't unwind when she was around. Can't we spend weekends just as a family? I suggested to my husband. I always feel like I have to be on my best behavior when your mom is around. Mom is family too. It's you who's making it awkward on your own, he replied, not understanding my feelings. Whenever she visited, my mother-in-law would criticize my cooking and housekeeping, saying it was to educate me as a wife. If something wasn't clean enough, she'd inspect everything closely. It was exhausting. I was working full-time and doing my best to clean the house on weekends, but it was always stressful when my mother-in-law would come over and point out things I hadn't cleaned yet. Her criticisms hurt, especially when she commented on my cooking skills, saying I didn't even have the basics down. Even when I tried my best, it never seemed to be good enough for her. My husband would join in, echoing her criticisms, which was tough to swallow. It was especially frustrating to see him suddenly become more assertive in her presence. I finally decided to talk to him about it when his mother wasn't around. If you have any complaints about me, can't you tell me directly? You don't need to wait for your mom to be here, I said. But he just shrugged it off, saying he only remembered when she mentioned it. His response left me feeling even more frustrated. As a couple, I wish we could be more supportive of each other, but it seemed like an impossible task. Our arguments about his mother became more frequent, especially as our daughter started elementary school. Then, I received a call from my mother, informing me that my father was unwell. My mother was struggling to care for him alone, so I decided to go back home and help out during breaks from work. During this time, I left our daughter in Steve's care. She was growing more independent and even started helping out around the house. She understood that I was under a lot of stress, and her cooperation was a huge relief. One day, my mother-in-law showed up at our house and started scolding me fiercely. "Steve is doing everything for the child." "What are you thinking?" she exclaimed. I apologized, explaining that my father's health was deteriorating and I needed to be there for him. But she didn't seem to understand, insisting that housework and childcare were solely my responsibilities as a wife. She even suggested that if I cared so much, I should handle those duties first before anything else. It was clear that she didn't share my belief in prioritizing family in times of need. Her fierce demeanor left me speechless. She couldn't accept the idea of her own son doing housework and taking care of the kids. "Who do you think earns the money you live on? Don't forget that you owe it all to Steve. You're really ungrateful," she scolded me harshly, while my husband stood by silently, offering no defense. It wasn't like we solely relied on Steve's salary. I worked too. But my mother-in-law insisted that everything was thanks to him. There were times when I had no choice but to ask Steve for help, especially with tasks like laundry. But even then, he seemed to harbor resentment, especially knowing how angry his mother would get. As I juggled housework, childcare, and caregiving, Steve's treatment of me worsened. I wanted to handle the housework myself whenever possible. But when I truly couldn't manage, I asked him for help. "At least take care of your own things," I pleaded. But he seemed oblivious to my feelings, retorting, "Isn't that what a wife is for? Why should I have to do it?" Despite earning less than him now, Steve acted arrogantly, reminding me that if we divorced, I couldn't live with our daughter. My salary had decreased when I changed jobs, and I had prioritized it to have less overtime because our child was young. Steve started making unreasonable demands, even threatening divorce over trivial matters. "If you really want to focus on caregiving, clean the house spotless every day before you go," he'd say, fully aware that I couldn't manage that with my full-time job. He criticized the meals I prepared, saying the variety was too small, and he refused to eat store-bought ready meals, adding to my exhaustion from cooking elaborate dishes. Since then, I started taking our daughter with me when I visited my parents' house, no longer expecting anything from my demanding husband. I stopped caring much about him and reduced the effort I put into pleasing him. My mother loved my daughter dearly and was always happy when we visited. Emma, my daughter, adored her grandmother and always enjoyed spending time playing with her. "Could you come, but are you pushing yourself too hard? Your face looks tired, and I'm worried." My mother noticed my fatigue right away. "It's okay, Mom. I'm really relieved that you can take care of Emma," I reassured her, feeling guilty for relying so much on her during this time. Amidst the grief of my father's passing, my mother and I discussed the inheritance. It turned out that my father was wealthy and owned several properties, including the mansion we called home. The house was large enough to be considered a mansion, old but well-maintained and still very livable. Originally, my parents had lived there together. When my husband first came to meet my parents before our marriage, He was surprised to see the mansion. The area was popular as a vacation spot due to its good transport links and abundant natural beauty, which my parents were deeply attached to. "Mom, you should continue living in this house, right?" I assumed she would inherit and stay there, but her opinion was different. "I think this house is too big for just me. Maintaining the mansion would be difficult for my elderly mother," she explained. After discussions, it was decided that I would inherit the house and my mother would move to a conveniently located apartment using the inheritance. After my father's funeral, I stayed at the mansion with my daughter to sort out his belongings and handle the inheritance procedures. I left the shopping to my mother and daughter and worked alone when suddenly my mother-in-law and husband barged in. "What's going on? Why the sudden visit?" I asked, taken aback. "I hear you inherited this mansion," my mother-in-law said, looking around the mansion curiously. "It's spacious enough for all of us to live together comfortably." Confused by her words, I asked again what she meant. "We're moving in today. I'll thoroughly train you to be a proper wife to our family," my mother-in-law declared with a grin. I couldn't help but laugh at her absurd statement. I looked them both in the eye and said, "A wife for this family? Who are you talking about? I'm single, you know." "Huh? What are you talking about?" they asked, clearly confused. "I've already filed for divorce, so we're strangers now too. Too bad there's no wife left for you to train, huh?" I revealed. They were shocked, their eyes wide open. They'd probably never thought I would actually go through with it. "There's nothing to forgive. Steve is the one who initiated the divorce," I continued. "Don't get cocky. A wife shouldn't oppose her husband," my mother-in-law retorted, becoming agitated. But I was done with their manipulation. In fact, just before my father passed away, I had submitted the divorce papers that my husband had been using to threaten me. Even while I was caring for my father, my husband didn't help at all. I had run out of patience with him, but neither he nor my mother-in-law would listen to what I had to say. My anger with my mother-in-law reached its peak. "It's ridiculous to think that just because I'm your daughter-in-law, I should obey everything." "A daughter-in-law is not a maid," I asserted. I didn't care about being disliked by her anymore. I was no longer her daughter-in-law. But my mother-in-law lost her temper and grabbed me. I struggled desperately, but she overpowered me. "Stop. Let me go," I pleaded. Realizing I couldn't handle this alone, I called the police. As they tried to restrain her, she lashed out and hit an officer. She was taken away to the police station. My husband stood there stunned, unable to comprehend that we were divorced. Later, he came to my workplace, looking disheveled and defeated. He had fallen into gambling due to stress and financial struggles. Without his mother's support, he was lost. He asked me to reduce the child support, citing financial difficulties, but I refused, reminding him that we had agreed upon the amount together. "You said you wanted to do everything you could as a father," I reminded him. He clicked his tongue unhappily, realizing the situation had changed. My ex-husband's attempt to reduce the child support disappointed me. From my point of view, if he hadn't gambled, he could afford to pay child support, I thought. It was disappointing to see his lack of responsibility as a father. "It must be tough on just your salary," he said, suggesting we try again. But the idea of remarrying just because of financial struggles irritated me. "Who would remarry you? I'm absolutely done with mama's boys," I replied firmly. "What did you say?" He reacted violently, showing no awareness of being a mama's boy. "You can't decide anything without your mom, can you? The house, furniture, appliances. You consulted her about everything," I pointed out. Despite his objections, I had more to say. "I know you even went shopping with your mom to pick out your clothes. That's what people call a mama's boy," I added, hitting a nerve. He seemed visibly frustrated. "You always mocked me for my low salary, but I won't let you say that anymore," I asserted. Surprised, he refused to believe that I earned more than him now. After changing jobs, I was appreciated for my diligent work and managed to get promoted. "Now I earn more than you do," I informed him confidently. Faced with my response, he fell silent. Moreover, I had inherited some assets, so I was living comfortably without him. Now I don't have to be forced to do household chores, and I no longer have to deal with a nagging mother-in-law, which is very comfortable, I added. He then suggested sharing the mansion and other properties I inherited. "Sorry, but you have no rights to them," I explained. "It's all your fault for filing for divorce on your own," he blamed me. "If you did nothing wrong, we wouldn't be divorced," I countered. I reminded him of his lack of support when I was caring for my father. That's because you didn't manage the household chores properly, he argued. Realizing he had no intention of supporting me as a spouse, my love for him cooled. It's unreasonable for me to work the same hours and still be the only one handling housework and childcare, I argued. But he insisted. Housework and childcare are a wife's duty. It's wrong of you to push that onto your husband. No matter how much I explained, his mindset wouldn't change. It seemed like the influence of his mother from his childhood still lingered. My ex-husband, who caused a scene at my workplace, was escorted away by security. Later on, both he and his mother found themselves in a tough financial situation and had to sell their family home. They moved to a rundown apartment and struggled to pay child support while battling their gambling addiction. Despite their hardships, they couldn't break free from the cycle. As for me, I'm focused on my work, and with my mother's support, I am happily living with my daughter. I've noticed that I smile much more now, which brings joy to my daughter as well. Instead of spending my days worrying about my ex-husband's and mother-in-law's moods, I'm determined to live life on my own terms and set a positive example for my daughter. Now I must raise my daughter by myself, and this situation has made me realize the importance of parental education. I want to instill in my daughter values of compassion, empathy, and helping those in need. No matter how tough things may get, I've decided to face them with a smile.
I reluctantly left my in-laws' place, dreading the fact that I had to visit the person I really didn't want to see, my mother-in-law. She's the mother of my beloved spouse, but I just don't get along with her. As soon as we got to my in-laws' house, my daughter started crying, maybe sensing my discomfort. The more I tried to calm her down, the louder she wailed, almost as if she could feel my frustration. Then, unexpectedly, my nephew, the son of my brother-in-law, piped up. "Do you know why the baby's crying?" When my brother-in-law asked him, my nephew confidently replied, "Yes." Little did anyone know, that answer would later alter my destiny. My name's Willow, 29 years old. Ken and I have been married for 2 years, and we've clicked from the start. We're more like best friends than anything else. Ken's mom, however, isn't a fan of our bond. She's made it clear, not directly, but through her actions, that she's not fond of me. Whenever we're alone, she makes sure to give me a hard time. It's like she's protecting her son, Ken, fiercely. When we visit her, she gets visibly uncomfortable when Ken and I chat. But it's only when we're alone that she unloads her disapproval. She doesn't hold back, saying hurtful things about how I shouldn't be affectionate with Ken in her presence because I'm not family like she is. She goes as far as wishing Ken would divorce me. It's all so harsh that I'm left speechless every time. It's tough realizing my mother-in-law harbors such strong negative feelings toward me. I really want to build a good relationship with her, but this situation isn't helping. I've kept it from Ken, thinking it might make things worse. Looking back, I should have discussed it with him and created some distance from his mom early on. But I was so desperate for her approval. Things got even more complicated 6 months into our marriage when my mother-in-law started obsessing over grandchildren. It was like she couldn't let it go. One day, out of the blue, she said, "Willow, I think our family needs a boy as the heir." Everyone, including Ken, froze. Ken, bless him, stood up for me, telling his mom it wasn't okay to pressure us like that. He reminded her that having a child is a blessing, not a race, and our timeline is our own. Even though Kyle and his wife had a baby early in their marriage, it doesn't mean we have to follow the same path. He kindly asked his mom not to interfere too much. Despite my husband's efforts, my mother-in-law remained unimpressed. I chose to ignore her occasional icy glares. Kyle, Ken's brother, had tied the knot 5 years back, and soon after, his wife got pregnant, giving birth to a son, Billy, who's turning 4 soon. Billy adores being around us, and I can see him grow every time we meet. But what's remarkable is that Billy's words have been like a lifeline for me more than once. It all began when Billy was just 2.5 and started talking. One day, as I was about to leave my in-laws' place, Billy piped up, "Auntie, you should take a different road when you go home." Surprised, I asked him why. He replied, "The usual way isn't good. Take a different road. So I followed his advice that day. My husband had been drinking, so I had to drive. As I drove home, Billy's words echoed in my mind, leading me to take a different route. The next day, I was shaken to the core when the news reported a major accident on the exact road I was supposed to take the day before. I dropped the mug I was holding in shock. When I recounted my conversation with Billy to my husband, he dismissed it as mere coincidence. But Billy's comments continued to unsettle me. He never showcased his abilities in front of my husband or mother-in-law. It made me wonder if he possessed some kind of magical powers. One day, I decided to confide in my brother-in-law, Kyle. "Kyle, can we talk about Billy?" I asked, noticing a flicker of understanding in his expression. He took my arm and led me away from the others, speaking in a hushed tone. "What's going on with Billy?" he asked. "Well, maybe it's just a coincidence, but Billy has saved my life a couple of times," I confessed. "Saved you?" Kyle's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Yeah, from accidents and other situations. I was thinking maybe Billy has some kind of special power," I explained. "I see. So you've noticed it too," Kyle nodded. "He usually only shows that side of him to me and my wife. But I guess he revealed it to you as well." As time passed, I learned that Billy had displayed his special abilities to my brother-in-law and his wife on several occasions. They didn't think much of it, as Billy had never made such comments to anyone outside the family. However, they understood the potential complications if Billy's power became public knowledge. So they made efforts to keep it hidden. I couldn't shake off my curiosity about why Billy was revealing his power to me as well. It had been almost a year since I first discovered it. Recently, I found out that I was pregnant, but the morning sickness made it hard for me to visit my in-laws frequently. I heard that my brother-in-law and his wife were planning to visit, and while I was eager to see them, I also felt relieved that I wouldn't have to face my mother-in-law during the last trimester of my pregnancy. As my morning sickness settled down, my belly grew, making daily life a bit more challenging. Going on maternity leave should be a time of preparation and anticipation, but for me, it came with a barrage of calls from my mother-in-law. Every day, without fail, she'd ring me up, demanding to know if I was taking the supplements she sent. I was already taking folic acid, which I bought myself, but she insisted I switch to the expensive ones she recommended from a mail-order site. Her concern wasn't just about the supplements, it was about the gender of the baby. She made it clear that she expected a boy, considering me a failure as a wife for not delivering what she deemed a satisfactory child. Personally, I didn't care about the baby's gender. All I wanted was a healthy child. But my mother-in-law was fixated on having her way, right down to the gender. Dealing with her pressure was mentally exhausting. When I eventually told her the baby was a girl, she was furious. From then on, her harassment escalated. She insisted I take the supplements she sent, bombarded me with books on preparing for a second child, when I hadn't even given birth to the first one yet, and continued her daily calls. Her words turned increasingly cruel, filled with heartless abuse. She called me a worthless wife, regretted allowing us to marry, and even suggested I divorce her son. It was relentless and deeply hurtful. After giving birth, I found myself worn out both physically and mentally, haunted by my mother-in-law's hurtful words. I couldn't bring myself to tell my husband how much they were affecting me. I didn't want to burden him. But more than that, I feared any backlash from my mother-in-law. Despite the daily battles with anxiety, I managed to bring a healthy baby girl into the world. She was so precious that her presence overshadowed any negativity from my mother-in-law. 1 month later, my husband drove me to my in-laws' house to introduce them to our daughter. Alongside my brother-in-law, his wife, and Billy, I hoped to see my father-in-law and reconnect with them after some time apart. As we approached their house, I felt a knot of apprehension. I dreaded facing my mother-in-law's words again, but more than fear, I was eager to reunite with the rest of the family. Yet, the closer we got, the harder it became for me to walk, anticipating what my mother-in-law might say this time. I couldn't shake off the worry about her potentially hurting my daughter as she grew older. That thought weighed heavily on my mind. Despite my reluctance, I made my way to my in-laws' house. Thankfully, it was my brother-in-law who greeted us, along with his family, who had arrived earlier. My mother-in-law was busy playing with Billy in the living room when she noticed us. Suddenly, my daughter started crying, seemingly out of nowhere. My husband was concerned, but my father-in-law tried to reassure us, chalking it up to the change in surroundings. I did my best to calm my daughter, but she wouldn't stop crying. My mother-in-law let out an irritated sigh and muttered, "This is why girls are trouble." In that moment, I felt a surge of anger like never before. No matter how much I loved her son, I couldn't forgive her for such a comment. Why did the baby's gender matter? She was safe and healthy. I resolved to endure the day and never return. Then Billy, who had been playing happily, suddenly spoke up. His words made me exchange a glance with my brother-in-law. Maybe he was using his power. When my brother-in-law casually asked why the baby was crying, Billy confidently responded, saying the baby felt sorry for me and wanted my mother-in-law to stop bullying me. My husband was taken aback, and everyone in the room turned to my mother-in-law, who seemed shaken and muttered something about Billy being strange. Billy boldly spoke up, revealing that Grandma had been mean to Auntie for a long time. Even when the baby was still in Auntie's belly, the baby didn't like it at all. My husband, taking it seriously, asked Billy if it was true. Billy confirmed it and said the baby wished she could tell Daddy, but he's too nice. She wanted Daddy to help Mommy. My husband thanked Billy, realizing the truth. He gave Billy a gentle smile before turning to his mother, his expression changing. He didn't care about her excuses and confronted her, demanding the truth. She denied it, trying to make me cover for her. But in that moment, I remembered all the times she had treated me poorly. It was time to speak up. I looked my husband in the eye and confessed that his mother had been bullying me since we got married. I knew it, but I was scared to tell him. My husband hugged me and our daughter, then turned to his mother with a resolve I'd never seen before. He called her out for her behavior, saying he was disappointed and didn't even see her as a mother anymore. He demanded she stay out of our lives. His mother pleaded, but my husband didn't buy it. He saw through her excuses, knowing she bullied me because I took him from her and because our baby wasn't a boy. He made it clear that he didn't want her involved with us anymore. It was a tough moment, but I knew it was necessary for our family's well-being. Why does it matter if our grandchild is a girl? I interjected, refusing to accept my mother-in-law's selfish desires. My husband, Ken, made it clear that he would choose me over her any day. He didn't want to continue a family with someone like her. My mother-in-law pleaded with Ken, begging him not to cut her out of his life. But he stood firm, looking at her with disdain. He reiterated that he was cutting ties with her, just as he had said. It was a heartbreaking moment, but necessary for our family's peace and well-being. In response to my husband's decision, my father-in-law and brother-in-law also chose to cut ties with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law even forced her to divorce him and leave the family home. With no money or place to go, she had to return to her parents' house. However, there, she was treated more like a housekeeper than a family member. It seemed like karma had caught up with her, and she was getting what she deserved. Meanwhile, we continued to visit my father-in-law and brother-in-law, maintaining good relationships with them and their families. Billy's magical abilities seemed to fade over time, and he rarely mentioned them anymore. Some say that babies and animals can sense things adults can't, but whether that's true or not, Billy's words had undoubtedly saved my life. Thanks to him, I'm now living a happy life. One day, I hope to share Billy's story, including his mysterious power, with my daughter. He played a significant role in our lives, and I want her to know about the extraordinary impact he had. Your dad's gone, and this house is mine now since I'm his wife. My stepmom scolded me, sounding like I was a naughty kid. The funeral had just finished, leaving me feeling as heavy and gloomy as a stormy sky. Angry, I snapped back. This is my home from childhood. You should leave with all your affairs with younger guys, betraying Dad. You don't deserve to be called his wife." She just snorted and said, "Tough luck. I'm getting the house and $1 million from the estate. I'll give you a measly $50. I couldn't help but laugh, which annoyed her. When I showed her a document, her face turned pale. "Can you read this?" I asked. She went white, stuttering, "No, it can't be true, right? I'm Kelly, a 29-year-old homemaker who also works part-time. My dad was a lawyer, pretty well known in his field. He started his own firm and put in long hours with a few colleagues. My mom passed away when I was young, so I don't remember much about her. Dad was always busy with work, so I was mostly raised by my grandmother. But I never felt lacking because of it. Grandma was always kind, and I had plenty of other supportive relationships. I sailed through high school without much trouble. But when I started university, things changed. A new woman entered our family, disrupting the dynamic. It had always been just Dad and me. "This lady will be your mother from today. Try to get along," Dad suddenly announced. She was decked out in designer clothes from head to toe. "Nice to meet you, Kelly. You can call me Mom, and we can go shopping together," she said brightly. She seemed like someone I could be friends with. But living with her as a mother was a different story. Our personalities clashed, and it was clear we weren't going to get along. I'm more of a homebody, enjoying my days off with a coffee and relaxation indoors. My stepmother, on the other hand, was always out and about, shopping or going to parties. We didn't exactly clash, but we tended to keep our distance from each other. The real trouble began after I graduated from university and got a job as an office worker. My workplace was a 20-minute train ride from home, so I decided to stick around at my parents' house for a while. My relationship with my stepmom stayed peaceful, so I saw no urgent reason to move out. About 6 months into my job, I found myself at a social gathering with my coworkers. I'm not big on drinking, but I couldn't skip out on this party since almost everyone from work was going. On the way home, walking through a busy street with a few colleagues heading the same way, I spotted someone familiar from behind. It was my stepmother. Wondering what she was doing there, I glanced next to her and saw a young man I didn't recognize walking beside her. If they were just walking together, I might have thought they were friends despite the age gap. I was taken aback when I saw my stepmother walking arm in arm with a young man. The intimate vibe between them made me catch my breath. A colleague noticed my reaction and asked what was wrong, but I just laughed it off, unable to confide in someone I barely knew about the possibility of my stepmother cheating. I quickly made an excuse to leave and followed them, easily blending into the busy downtown crowd. As they walked, my stepmother and the young man seemed comfortable with each other, chatting closely like a couple. After about 3 minutes, they glanced around cautiously before entering a building. It turned out to be a lodging facility, and the shock of the discovery made me feel sick. I left the area, feeling betrayed and angry. The next morning, when my stepmother returned home, slightly drunk from a night out, I confronted her. She sarcastically asked what was wrong, noting that I usually avoided her. I didn't hold back, telling her I saw her with the young man entering a hotel. Caught off guard, she tried to dismiss it, suggesting it might have been someone who looked like her. She challenged me to provide proof, putting me in a difficult spot because I had none. Despite knowing what I saw, I couldn't confront her without evidence. Even though I saw the truth with my own eyes, she easily brushed it off. "You're too naive, Kelly. Maybe it's because you come from a good family," she taunted. She accused me of wanting to kick her out of the house, but defiantly claimed she wouldn't leave until I could prove it. Frustrated by her dismissive attitude, I was determined to expose her infidelity. I scraped together all the money I could and hired a private investigator. After a week of investigation, the shocking truth came out. She was cheating with 3 different young men simultaneously. Armed with this evidence, I went to my father, who had always been distant due to his busy schedule. But he brushed me off, barely acknowledging my presence as he buried himself in his work. He even interrupted me when his phone rang, showing little concern for my troubles. It was a painful reminder of his neglect throughout my life. Feeling disillusioned and unsupported, I decided to leave, distancing myself from my father and stepmother. Living on my own for the first time was tough, but it was a relief to escape the indifference of my father and the recklessness of my stepmother. It was a chaotic transition, but ultimately, life felt more comfortable without them. Years later, I found love with a senior colleague at work, and we eventually got married. We decided against a wedding ceremony to avoid facing my father and stepmother, whose presence I couldn't bear. Instead, I sent my father a photo of me in my wedding dress. Our life together began, and we were happiest planning our future, like building a house or starting a family. In the years since I moved out, I rarely heard from my father, so it was a shock when his name flashed on my phone one day. The voice on the other end introduced himself as one of my father's colleagues and told me my father had collapsed at work and was in the hospital. I rushed to his side immediately. At the hospital, a man in a suit met me at the entrance and led me to my father's room. He lay pale and motionless in the bed, surrounded by tubes. His colleague explained they couldn't reach his wife, my stepmother. It seemed he had tried to contact her as well. Despite multiple attempts, my father's colleague couldn't reach my stepmother. Feeling hesitant to trouble him further, I reluctantly decided to call her myself. However, she didn't answer my calls initially. After about 30 minutes, she finally called back, sounding annoyed at the inconvenience. I informed her about my father's situation and asked when she could come to the hospital. With a groan, she dismissed the urgency and cheerfully stated that she was too busy to come, leaving everything to me. Before I could respond, she hung up abruptly. I tried calling her back immediately, but her phone was off. It seemed she had deliberately switched it off. I had hoped that even though my stepmother had shown her indifference before, she would still come to the hospital when my father collapsed. However, she proved me wrong. She not only failed to visit, but also didn't bother to show any concern for him during his time in the hospital. I took on the responsibility of managing his hospital admissions, daily care, and paperwork, using up my paid leave in the process. Despite our estrangement over the years, I couldn't shake off the worry for my father. I visited him daily, hoping for his recovery, but unfortunately, he never woke up. His passing left me overwhelmed with tasks. I had to handle legal matters, arrange the funeral, and notify acquaintances from his law firm. Although his colleagues were helpful in reaching out to relevant parties, my stepmother remained absent until the day of the funeral. Seeing her shed tears at my father's coffin, after showing no support during his illness, angered me. It felt like the mockery of his memory. In a moment of intense emotion, I couldn't contain myself. I grabbed her arm and pulled her outside, expressing my frustration and anger. I told her to never show her face to me again, fed up with her insincerity and hypocrisy. My stepmother's abrupt halt to her tears was jarring. With a snide remark about my supposed acting, she made her exit, leaving behind a lingering threat. 2 weeks later, after the funeral and the settling of affairs, I returned to my childhood home for the first time in years. My purpose was clear: to begin sorting through my father's belongings in earnest. While I had previously relocated documents pertaining to his work, personal items like clothes and books remained untouched. I didn't expect my stepmother to take an interest in them, so the task fell to me. About an hour into my organizing efforts, my stepmother returned home, bursting into the living room with an air of authority. Her accusatory tone, as if scolding a misbehaving child, didn't sit well with me. I stood my ground, ready to assert myself. As I sorted through my father's things, my stepmother interrupted, claiming ownership of the house and the $1 million inheritance. She offered me a measly $50, which I found absurd and couldn't help but laugh. This seemed to irritate her, and she insisted that she, as my father's wife, had the right to everything. But I challenged her, pointing out that she was only a common law wife and not a legal heir. She froze, realizing her mistake, and tried to argue her case, but I stood my ground. I suggested that she was sloppy in hiding her affairs and avoiding official marriage documents. I refused to let her kick me out, unleashing years of frustration. She tried to argue back, mentioning a will or life insurance policy. but I knew her claims wouldn't hold up. It turned out that my stepmother's claims were baseless. There was no will, and I was the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Additionally, proving her status as a common-law wife would be challenging, especially given her affairs. Despite not being well-versed in survivor pensions, it seemed enough to intimidate her. As her hopes crumbled, my stepmother's demeanor grew more serious. With a final ultimatum, I demanded she leave or face police intervention. Frustrated, she hastily packed her belongings and left. Later, I heard rumors about her struggles. Dependent on my father's income, she hadn't worked in years and struggled to find stable employment. Reduced to odd jobs, she now lived day to day. Despite her struggles, my stepmother's selfish nature persisted. She attempted to seek support from old acquaintances, but none were willing to accommodate her. Desperate and lacking funds, she resorted to a shocking move, approaching my husband, claiming her superiority in looks and appeal over me. It was a transparent attempt to stir up trouble, but my husband firmly rejected her advances. Frustrated by her failed attempts to disrupt my family, my stepmother's actions only evoked pity. I swiftly involved the authorities, and she received a stern warning. Hopefully, she learned from this experience. While sorting through my father's belongings, I stumbled upon his diary. Though hesitant to invade his privacy, I couldn't resist the urge to peek. The entries revealed his deep concern for my well-being and future. It became clear that his hard work was driven by a desire to ensure my financial security and happiness. Tucked within the pages was a cherished photo, my young father, my biological mother, and me, all beaming with joy. It was a poignant reminder that I was truly loved by my parents. As I flipped through the diary, another photo caught my eye, a recent one of my father and my stepmother. Despite my confusion about why my father stayed in a common-law relationship with my stepmother, it was evident that he cared for her in his own way. Sadly, her feelings didn't seem to match his. Determined to understand and reciprocate love, I was overjoyed to discover that I was pregnant. Recent visits to the hospital confirmed that our baby is developing well. Looking ahead to our child's future, my husband and I made the decision to move into the house my father left us. Our current apartment doesn't have enough space for a nursery, so we're willing to invest in a suitable home for our growing family. Every decision we make is with our child's best interests at heart. Just as my parents loved me, I am committed to showering this child with love and care. It's a promise I've made to myself.